Hello and welcome to Gamespot's coverage of E3 2013. My name is Danny O'Dwyer and you're watching Stage 2 on e3.gamespot.com or twitch.tv/Gamespot E3 Stage 2. I'm going to be saying that a lot over the next couple of days, so you'll probably have it memorized. Stage 2 by name, but not by nature. We've got some absolutely huge games here on this stage. Chris Waters is doing his own thing over there with Killer Instinct at the moment. We've got great games like Dead Rising 3, the Bureau XCOM Declassified, and tons more over the next 3 days. But talking about massive games, we're starting off with a banger here. Yesterday at the Sony conference, we saw another look at Killzone Shadowfall, and I'm very happy to be joined by Hermen Hulst here from Guerrilla Games, who's going to show us more of Killzone Shadowfall.
Yes, we are.
So before we show a bit of the gameplay, we've got an exclusive clip as well. Before we get into that, just want to talk to you about yesterday, the Sony conference. Were you there yourself?
I was there.
What did you think about the announcement? Did you know it was coming? The sort of all the issues about the used games, the issues about online connectivity, and then the set of games that Sony had. Were you expecting it? Did you know about it?
I was aware of it, but not for very long, obviously. I wasn't part of the conference as a presenter, but I thought it was hugely positive. I thought it was a great signal to the industry. It's exactly what gamers want. When I talked to my team back at Guerrilla Games in Amsterdam, all these kind of ways of dealing with second-hand is exactly what us as developers want. So that's it's really great news.
When you think about it, we hear a lot of negativity from the industry, mostly from publishers in relation to second-hand. Do you feel like when you create a good game that it speaks for itself and that the market adopts it, or do you feel that there is always a percentage of people who will try and get the game late and that you won't see any of those profits?
I think mostly people go out and they purchase something and they just, they feel it's theirs, whatever they bought. And it really is kind of that simple. So we keep it simple and straightforward, and that's great.
Cool. All right, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, we'll be taking questions from the chat. If you guys have any questions for Hermen or myself, please send them to @DannyO'Dwyer on Twitter. I'll be checking them here on my phone post-haste. But for the moment, let's have a look at some exclusive gameplay footage, or gameplay rather, of Killzone Shadowfall. So you guys showed some gameplay at the PlayStation meeting, as it were, back in February.
Yes.
You showed quite a lot there. You also showed some yesterday at the E3 conference. Going into Killzone Shadowfall, this is you guys have been around since the PlayStation 2 era. It's been a massive franchise for the Sony. There are some visual differences here between what we were used to, I guess, with Killzone 2 and 3. What's been the focus going into Killzone Shadowfall?
So it's definitely a fresh look. I think with the arrival of the PlayStation 4, it was a great moment for us to take a look at everything. And that's the first thing you think next gen is, the fidelity, the new look. But I think what we're showing here today is a focus all on gameplay. You have a new story, a new conflict now. It's very much it's Cold War inspired gameplay. So the Helghast and the ISA live side by side now. They're separated by a vast wall, but that also asks for a new player character. So we're now a Shadow Marshal, and a Shadow Marshal it's the best of the best. It's kind of a one-man SEAL Team 6. So he's sent in there when there's kind of a last resort. And this guy, look at this, we have this owl that really enables a lot of his abilities here. He just ziplined. That's one of the things he can do. So you can use your touchpad to control the various abilities. You use your tactical echo to see your enemies behind cover. And it's a great, in attack mode, it draws fire from your enemies so you can flank them and take them out. So it's just one example of the new abilities in Killzone Shadowfall.
Just looking at this, it looks like more, not to try and box games into one category or another, but there are elements here that look a bit more open world, or maybe not open world, but open environments for battle than maybe we're used to in Killzone 2 and 3.
And I think that's, I'm happy you say that. It's one of the focal points we wanted, and next gen PlayStation 4 enables us to not just focus on fidelity, but also have much larger scale environments. And you look at these objectives, you could have played it completely differently. You could have taken a different objective first, but now you go to the comms tower here, and in the setting of this level, you need to evacuate. To actually set you up a little bit, you've been called in to rescue a queue that have been stranded here, and they have intel that you're trying to retrieve. You're sort of clearing your path to evacuate, so you're killing the radar here so you can safely get out. And the objectives can be played in a random order, so this map is really very flexible. And that is, I think it's an innovation in the Killzone franchise that I'm really happy with. It allows for a lot more variety, so every playthrough literally will be very, very different. You're going to encounter a lot of great moments that are going to be wonderful to share.
One of the most, I think, it's one of the most divisive areas of Killzone historically has been the way the character moves around. Some people think that maybe it's a bit too weighty because they're used to playing other games. I was part of the pack that actually really appreciated the feel of the character because I felt like you were really that person. So going into Killzone Shadowfall, have you guys altered that at all? Has it got the same kind of weighty feel to it, or is it a bit snappier?
It is. It's both. It's the combat and these kind of the controls of your character need to be visceral, and it's going to stay that way. It needs to have that weight to it, and at the same time, all the controls and everything have been optimized, so it's also snappier. It's not either or.
The first-person shooter space at the moment, it's getting pretty packed again. I guess there's always been the sort of I don't want to say lower tier, but there's been a first-person shooters that maybe weren't in the same realm as your Killzones, your Call of Duties, and your Battlefield. Now we've got stuff like Titanfall, we've Destiny. That whole space seems to be the sort of AAA first-person shooter realm. Seems to be getting quite busy, shall we say, quite populated. How do Guerrilla Games feel about that, since you guys have been at the forefront of it for, I guess, around a decade now at this stage? Does it concern you? Do you look at those guys and say, that's a good idea, maybe we might incorporate it? What do you kind of see at the moment?
So first off, as gamers, we love these kind of games that come out. Like, we're going to play all of those. But also a lot of the inspiration that we take comes actually from within the franchise. So the Shadow Marshal was inspired by Lugar, a character in Killzone 1. She was a Shadow Marshal. So we often take inspiration from within the franchise. But mostly with this game, we're doing our own thing. Whereas in the past, it was much more kind of like a roller coaster. Now it's much more like an amusement park where you get to pick your own rides, get to determine. You determine the pace of the combat with all these new abilities that you've got. And so we're not really looking so much at what other people are doing. We're kind of looking at what the PlayStation 4 allows us to do. We were talking earlier about the more open environments allowing for more free-flowing combat, but also having more AI on the screen, having many more options. So we really kind of look at what we're doing rather than just trying to predict what other people are going to do.
Because of the sort of the relatively new aesthetic that we're seeing here, and obviously in terms of gameplay, you guys are wandering away from your comfort zone in terms of what Killzone is. Was there ever a desire to maybe step away from the Killzone as a franchise? Are you guys still set in that universe? Or was this the sort of thing where there was pressure from Sony to make sure that there was a new Killzone game?
Sony's great. Sony gives their studios a lot of freedom in making these kind of decisions. We love Killzone, and we have a lot of people that came to work specifically at Guerrilla to work on Killzone. And we're not deviating so much. It's definitely a new look, a new gameplay style. But further on in the game, you're definitely going to recognize a lot of what people loved about the franchise. And at the same time, at Guerrilla, we're also working on a new IP in parallel to this project, right? So we're getting that fix while we're doing what we love to do. And that's developing Killzone.
We've probably only got a couple of minutes of this exclusive footage left, so let's just concentrate on that for the moment. I'm sure we've got plenty of questions. So what's happening here at this stage? A couple of people are tweeting, wondering what's going on with this little gentleman that's following you around.
Yeah, so we have the Owl, right? And this is your very personalized robotic attack drone. It's your attack drone, and it's got abilities that let you stun enemies, can put it in attack mode, and it fires at nearby enemies. It zip lines, what you see on the screen right here. So that's free form. You can go anywhere in the level, to a certain distance, of course. How long? For how long?
Yeah.
I think it's about 50 meters, actually.
All right, that's pretty good.
So Not sure if you're going to zip line because
Can you zip line down as well? Up?
Not up. No. So we adhere to the laws of gravity there, right? So you've got a stun. You've got a shield as well. So you just put it in stun mode now. You see the effects on the guys, and this is adrenaline mode. So you can use one of your health packs to go into a short period of slow motion.
Okay.
That really helps you get out of a hairy situation when you're outnumbered. So this game is very much not only about outgunning enemies, but also about outsmarting and outmaneuvering enemies. So in that sense, it's just as much about skill as it is about using your brains. It's a much more intelligent game.
Squad play was a big part of the Killzone franchise as well. Are you a lone gunner in this? Do you have a squad that you work alongside or with?
So actually one of your objectives is to retrieve the intel from your stranded crew. So you're going to be meeting them shortly. And they will later on in this level fight alongside you. But of course you also have the owl now, which very much is your companion. So you've got both.
We were talking before about how this is you've had so many games in the franchise, it's kind of a new look. It looks fresh in terms of gameplay or mixing it up. Was there ever a consideration to just call it Killzone 4? What was the reason between changing the name?
Shadowfall, well, first off, we love the name. Secondly, I think with the arrival of PlayStation 4, we're making a game with a very fresh look, a very new gameplay style. We've got a slightly different story that's Cold War inspired, Cold War in space. So lots of new things. It felt right. It also mirrors kind of literally the Shadow Marshal gameplay, and it's also reflecting the storyline where you've got this big vast wall that's separating the Vectans from the Helghast. So that kind of casts a shadow over the world that you're living in, the home world that's so precious that you want to protect.
What's this? It's 30 years set after Killzone 3, right?
Yes.
It's interesting because you guys seem to be pulling quite a lot from basically 20th century warfare. Like the initial trilogy is very much a World War II sort of playing around in the background. Aesthetically, a lot of the themes.
Yeah, and Killzone, and World War I as well with the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you just mentioned Cold War there. Where does this come from? This sort of.
We were brainstorming early on with the entire design group, actually the entire studio. What are we going to do? And somebody mentioned it's going to be an Iron Curtain in space, and that really resonated with a lot of us. Because see the imagery that comes with the Cold War, the proximity of having the Vectans and the Helghast living so close by. The fact that it opens up deniable operations, which lets you explore the very rich background of the Helghast society as well. So lots of reasons why that kind of stuck. And so we took that further, we developed that further.
In the first 3 kills, just so everyone knows, we're going to play some of the footage that we saw back at the Sony meeting back in February. This stuff blew people's minds away when it first came out. This whole aesthetic here is so different to what people are used to in, I think, the Killzone trilogy as they're used to it. You guys have done a great job of desaturating the world, making it quite dark, and then having dramatic color in the faces of the Helghast, in the environments and stuff. And then we roll into this world, and it's just this beautiful vista of white, golden sunsets and gorgeous blue buildings. How was there an obvious choice in your guys' mind to try and make sure that this looked like with the new console generation?
Absolutely.
And you wanted to make it look different?
Yeah, absolutely. But also from the game itself. So obviously the PlayStation 4 allows us to build this, right? This lighting, this fidelity, the quality of the animations, everything. But also from a story perspective, you've got this, which is talking about this Cold War setting. Your world is under constant threat, and we want to make a beautiful world that you feel is worthy enough to protect. So we want to develop that connection to your home world, and it's much easier, I think, for people to want to protect something that they feel is beautiful
than want to destroy something that
Exactly. That's exactly the feedback we're getting on this. It's kind of a utopia that you want to protect.
So in terms of what we're seeing here, this kind of civic environment, is there much of the game that's played out in this area? Is this very much a kind of setup point near the start of the game?
So there's a lot of variety in the environments, but this is in Vector City. So Vector City is like Cold War Berlin. It's divided. It's very much a central part of it. But that doesn't mean that the majority is going to be, the majority of the game is going to be set in this exact setting. We've got a lot of different environments that feel quite special.
Just so people know, we're pulling this in from some stream footage, so if you want to see this in its glorious, full, high-definition quality, you should check out Gamespot.com or YouTube.com/Gamespot, where we have it. This was really interesting. When I first saw this, I, like a lot of people, saw the mask, and it did kind of look like a cat face to me.
A cat face, wow.
Did you guys know about this cat face look, or?
Actually, you're the first guy telling me
really?
that. In the guy cloaking here.
This was, I sort of thought it myself, and then some good people on Reddit on NeoGAF had come up with something similar. Maybe it's just me, maybe I just really like cats.
Yeah, no,
kind of whiskers, you know?
You see a kitty into everything, man.
Yeah. You see a cat.
It was a mean Helgas that betrayed you.
We're seeing a lot of single-player stuff. Obviously, you guys have shown this off, and then yesterday we've seen new footage, and we've just seen exclusive footage right here on Stage 2 here at e3.gamespot.com. Have you talked about multiplayer at all? Obviously, it was a massive focus in 2 or 3, incredibly successful as well. Surely you guys are delving back into the multiplayer for Shadowfall.
Yes, multiplayer is, as I always say, it's the other half of the game. It's not more or less important than single player. We're putting as much focus on multiplayer as we have before. I don't know exactly when we're going to be talking about the details. Probably a couple months from now, where we start first teasing that and then demoing that.
When is Shadowfall set for release?
So with the arrival of the PlayStation 4, so
really?
It's committed to launch.
Wonderful. Do you know if there's any other first-person shooters coming out for launch for the PlayStation 4? What are you guys looking at in terms of your competition there?
So we're looking at everything. I haven't tracked the exact release dates for other FPSs, but we're going to be there at launch.
So we talked briefly before we started about what Sony announced yesterday in relation to the used games policy. We've heard today as well that they're saying that third-party publishers will have the option to maybe disallow used games at retail. Well, at least there's a report intimating that. You guys are this will be a first-party published game, so by that definition, there will be freely available to play Killzone Shadowfall from a used copy, whether you bought it in a store or you got it loaned from a friend for a day or you got it off someone on eBay. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact that Shadowfall might be able to be shared around? Do you think it's a good thing that it exposes more people to the franchise, or do you worry that people who won't be interested in the multiplayer might pass it to somebody else?
I think it's great when you buy a copy of Shadowfall and you play through it, you've enjoyed it, you want to give it to your friend and he can play it. You want to sell it to your friend if you're that kind of guy, that'd be fine with me too. It's because you bought it, right? So it's yours.
Do you play used games yourself, or do you
I'll be honest with you, I usually go out and buy the game. I also get a lot of copies, but
yeah, for sure.
But no, I buy most of. Actually, I buy all of my stuff new. I have a great little game store, kind of a nice indie game store around the corner from my house that I frequent. So I don't usually find the time to be hackling over stuff.
Yeah.
I buy it new.
I'm assuming as well you've got a lovely array of consoles in your house as well. Do you feel, obviously you have an interesting relationship with Sony, do you feel that maybe Microsoft's direction is detrimental to their relationship with gamers?
I think it's great that what PlayStation showed yesterday and before is the razor-sharp focus on gaming. I'm, as a game developer and a gamer myself, I am super pleased with that. And I think everything around it, you were just talking about secondhand, I think that fits exactly within that focus.
Getting a couple of questions here from our folks on Twitter. If you have any questions, please at me, at Danny O'Dwyer on Twitter, and I'll pass them on. I'm being asked questions about 60 frames per second. What are you guys looking at in terms of the performance of Killzone Shadowfall? Is it 1080, 60 frames?
So what you're looking at here is at 1080p, and it's at 30 hertz. So obviously when you're making a game, you make your trade-offs, and we opted for great fidelity, very large scale, lots of AI, and we feel that works best for the game that we're developing.
Do you think that's the sort of thing like in the last generation? I guess some people are they've been expectant of 60 frames per second recently. There's been a couple of games yesterday that have announced they're going to do it. Do you think it's the sort of thing that really matters to gameplay and how a game... Do you think the difference, the gulf between frames per second while the game is running is more important than perhaps the set range? Do you think 60 frames is inherently better or worse than 30, or do you think stability is more important?
So I don't think you can give sort of pre-programmed answers to these kind of questions. I think you look at all constraints, all variables, and it's the trade-off that you make. And as I say, we focus on the incredible fidelity, on the scale, on creating this vibrant world, AIs that are many, but also able to reason with an inhabited world that's very vibrant in itself. So that's the game that we're making, and so those were our trade-offs.
Peter Evans on Twitter asked, would you need to play any of the old Killzone games to appreciate the story in Shadowfall? How many story beats are going to hark back to the original trilogy of games?
No, I think it's perfectly fine if this is if you haven't played Killzone before. We make sure that you can go right into the game. You're going to understand what you're doing, so it's definitely not a requirement. But of course, I encourage him to pick up previous Killzone games.
In terms of the environments in the world, we've seen this massive wall that kind of separates the two parts. Is it really split into these two separate zones, or is there a wider world? Can you kind of set up geographically what the world of Killzone Shadowfall is?
I can't give everything away, but it's a very key part to Killzone Shadowfall, the city of Vecta, that has obviously the Vecta side and the Helghast side. But I can tell you that we will visit other areas that will look very different, very, very different.
I've also been asked a lot of questions about your little companion there. Was it the Owl you called it?
We call him the Owl.
The Owl.
Yeah.
Is he upgradable? Do you have him from the start of the game to the end? Can you tell us a bit more about it?
So it's a game-wide set of features, and it really sets you up as the Shadow Marshal. So it allows you to be that guy that can take on your enemies in deniable fashion, but also can help you in all-out combat. So I've got these abilities that I listed before. It's pretty much through the entire campaign it's with you.
Killzone Mercenary is also being worked on at the moment. That's not being done at Guerrilla Games, is it? Or
so it is done at Guerrilla Games.
Okay.
We have two locations.
Okay.
So Shadowfall's built in Amsterdam. Mercenary is built at Guerrilla in Cambridge in the UK.
Are you happy? Would you prefer you live here in the Amsterdam office?
I am. Yeah,
How
I'm
often do you visit the guys in Cambridge? Cambridge is quite a small town.
It is a small town, but it's a 40-minute flight for me.
Okay.
So it's not really that crazy. I'm there very often. I don't know. I haven't tracked my agenda how often, but we're there all the time. There's a bunch of gorillas from Amsterdam actually in the studio now. I think about 5 or 6 of them relocated because they wanted to. There's a lot of crosswork. Also the game director on Killzone 2 and 3, Matthijs de Jong, and our art director on these games, they've been heavily involved in building Killzone Mercenary. I'm really happy with the fact that Killzone Mercenary is really shaping up to be a console-grade FPS on a handheld. That was the vision. We felt it hadn't been done before and we wanted to do it. You saw that, I'm not sure if you entered kind of early at the PlayStation conference, but there were several screens with live footage.
Yeah.
One of them was Killzone Mercenary, and it was right between all sorts of home console games. I thought it held up quite beautifully. I was quite proud of the team for that accomplishment.
One more question before you go. Guerrilla Games obviously working on another secret game, a new IP. Is there anything you can tell about when we might hear more about that game and what consoles it might be on?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Hermen, appreciate you coming on over and showing us Killzone Shadowfall. Here in Stage 2 we've got loads more games coming up, folks. Absolutely tons over the next day. We've got Skylander Swap Force coming up next, the Bureau, XCOM Declassified, Disney Infinity, Battlefield 4, absolute bangers all over the place. Skylander Swap Force will be next, so we're going from Helghan to the Portal of Power. But first, we've got a little short message from our friends at Ubisoft.